Welcome to today's ghost story, the school bus at Miller's Bridge. There are places in the Midwest where the land seems to stretch forever in straight lines, where fields meet sky without interruption and roads cut through them like quiet scars. People who grow up there learn early that distance has its own kind of silence. At night, that silence deepens into something that feels almost physical, pressing gently against the windows of passing cars. Miller's Bridge sits on one of those roads. It isn't famous, it doesn't appear on travel brochures or historic registers. It's simply a narrow concrete span crossing a slow, dark river between two farming towns that most maps label in small print. During the day, it looks ordinary. Weathered guardrails, faded lane markings, weeds pushing through cracks. But after sunset, drivers tend to slow as they approach it, even if they've never heard the stories. Some say it's because the bridge narrows unexpectedly. Others say the river fog gathers there first on cool nights. But locals know the real reason people hesitate before crossing: the bus. The first reports came decades ago, though no one agrees exactly when. A farmer driving home late claimed he saw a yellow school bus stopped halfway across the bridge, its hazard lights blinking. He assumed the driver needed help. When he pulled over and walked toward it, the lights went dark. By the time he reached the center span, the bridge was empty. He told neighbors the next day, embarrassed, half laughing. They laughed too. Fog, fatigue, headlights playing tricks. That's what everyone said. But then it happened again, to someone else. And again. By the time the story reached the younger generation, it had settled into the shape of a local warning. If you see a school bus stopped on Miller's Bridge at night, do not get out of your car. Keep driving. Do not look inside. Most teenagers treated it as a dare. On an October evening thick with harvest dust and cooling air, 4 high school seniors parked along a gravel turnout overlooking the river road. Their names were Evan, Tyler, Jess, and Mariah, kids who had grown up within 20 miles of each other, whose families knew the same grocery clerks and mechanics, whose childhoods were measured by football seasons and county fairs. They had come because Tyler insisted the legend was nonsense. He had a new camera set up for live streaming, tripod, light, wireless mic, and a restless need to prove things. Jess thought it might make a good video. Mariah came because she didn't want to be the only one who stayed home. Evan came because he always did when Tyler called. From the turnout, they could see the road curve toward the bridge, pale under the rising moon. Cornfields bordered both sides, their stalks dry and whispering. Beyond them, trees gathered in a black line marking the river's edge. "Looks normal," Tyler said, adjusting the camera. "It always does," Jess replied. She hugged her jacket closer. "That's kind of the point." They waited until full dark, joking at first, then falling into longer silences. Cars passed only occasionally, headlights sweeping across their parked vehicle and vanishing down the road. After the last one, the countryside settled into its nighttime rhythm. Insects, distant machinery, wind brushing the corn. "Okay," Tyler said finally. "We go down, set up on the bridge, prove there's nothing there. 10 minutes, done." Mariah shifted uneasily. "We're actually going on it?" "That's literally the idea," he said. Evan glanced toward the river. "My uncle said a bus really did crash there once." Jess nodded. "Yeah, in the 70s. Ice storm. Kids coming back from a game." The air seemed cool further at that. Even Tyler paused. "Still," he said after a moment, forcing lightness, "that's tragedy, not haunting." They drove slowly down the slope toward Miller's Bridge. Gravel popped beneath the tires, then asphalt hummed. As they rounded the final bend, the bridge appeared ahead, straight, narrow, pale in moonlight. No lights, no vehicles. "See?" Tyler said, but he didn't sound as confident now. They parked just before the bridge entrance. When the engine shut off, the silence felt immediate and deep. The river below moved slowly, reflecting faint silver through the rail gaps. Fog hovered low over the water, not yet reaching the roadway, but gathering. Tyler set the camera on the center line. The red recording light blinked on. "All right, we're here at Miller's Bridge, local legend site, supposedly haunted by a school bus that appears at night. We're about to show there's nothing here." Jess swept a flashlight beam along the rails, across empty pavement. Mariah stayed near the car, arms folded. Evan glanced toward the river, where the fog thickened into something like a wall. They talked for several minutes, filling space with jokes and speculation. Tyler walked halfway across, narrating. The bridge creaked faintly under his steps, old metal shifting in night air. Then Jess said, "Do you hear that?" Everyone stopped. At first there was only the river. Then faintly, so faintly it could have been imagined, came a sound like rubber against pavement, a low, rolling hum. Tyler turned toward the far end of the bridge. "Car?" "No headlights," Evan said. The hum deepened. It carried a rhythm, a mechanical weight unrecognizable once recognized, the slow approach of a heavy vehicle. Mariah's voice tightened. "We should move." Tyler kept the camera aimed forward. Probably just someone crossing. But the sound wasn't coming from the road behind them or ahead. It seemed to rise from below, from the river fog itself. They watched as the mist thickened under the bridge, swelling upward in pale folds. The hum grew louder, resolving into layered noises. Engine vibration, loose metal rattling, something knocking in steady intervals. And then headlights appeared. They did not crest the far hill or round the bend. They formed within the fog, two dim circles pushing outward until they shone clearly onto the bridge surface. A vehicle emerged slowly from the white mass. Yellow paint dulled by age, black window frames, high rectangular shape unmistakable in silhouette. A school bus. It rolled forward without urgency, tires whispering on concrete. No driver visible through the front glass, no interior lights, only those dull headlights and the grinding engine note. The bus reached the center span and stopped. Its door remained closed. Hazard lights did not blink. The engine idled, a low, even growl echoing across the river. No one spoke. Jess's flashlight trembled in her hand, beam shaking across the bus's flank. The paint looked wrong, not bright school bus yellow, but washed out, streaked with gray, as if submerged and dried repeatedly. Dark vertical marks ran from window frames downward. "Okay," Tyler whispered. "That's staged. Someone's messing with us." "From where?" Evan said. The road behind the bus was gone in fog, the far bank invisible. The bridge existed now only as a short island of pavement between two blank white distances. Mariah took a step back toward the car. "We're leaving." But Tyler moved forward instead, drawn by the camera and disbelief. The bus engine coughed once, then settled. A thin hiss leaked from somewhere beneath the chassis, like escaping air or water touching heat. Jess's light passed across the windows. Inside, rows of seats stood empty. Then the beam shifted, and for an instant shapes appeared against the glass. Dark silhouettes aligned with each seat, small, still, and upright. Jess inhaled sharply. The light jerked away. When she forced it back, the seats were empty again. "Did you see?" "Yeah," Evan said quietly. Tyler reached the folding door. The metal looked corroded along the edges. Moisture beaded on its surface, though the night air was dry. He raised a hand, hesitated inches from contact. Behind him, Mariah's voice shook. "Don't!" The bus engine cut off. Silence crashed down. For a moment, nothing moved. The headlights dimmed slightly but remained on, casting long, pale bars across the bridge rails. Fog pressed close around them, swallowing distance. Then, with a soft, mechanical shudder, the bus door began to open. It folded outward slowly, joints squealing. Cold air flowed from the interior, carrying a scent unmistakable and wrong. River water, mud, something long sealed and released. Tyler stood frozen at the threshold. The camera at his feet pointed upward into the stairwell darkness. No sound came from inside, no motion, only that smell and the faint drip of water striking metals somewhere beyond the first step. Jess whispered, "Tyler, come back!" He didn't move. The doorway yawned wider, black interior beyond, and from that darkness something shifted, just enough to suggest the outline of a small figure rising from a seat. The first step creaked under unseen weight. Tyler did not remember deciding to step forward. Later, he would try to recall the moment his body chose motion over fear, but the memory always dissolved into fragments. The smell of wet metal, the cold air spilling from the bus, the impossible sense that something inside was waiting specifically for him. The first step of the stairwell was slick, reflecting the pale beam from Jess's shaking flashlight. When his shoe touched it, a hollow metallic sound rang through the silence, too loud, as if the bus interior were a vast empty chamber rather than a narrow aisle. Behind him, someone whispered his name. He did not turn. The darkness inside the bus felt thick, layered with faint drifting mist. Rows of seats extended on both sides, their cracked vinyl surfaces gleaming with moisture. Water pooled along the ridged rubber floor, trembling with each distant movement of the river below. The air carried the smell of algae and rust, and something older, sealed too long without air. Tyler lifted his foot to the second step. The bus creaked softly in response, a long, settling groan traveling its frame. It sounded less like machinery and more like breath drawn through pain. Outside, Jess and Evan stood frozen to the threshold of light cast by the headlights. Mariah had reached the car but could not bring herself to open the door. All of them watched Tyler's silhouette enter the bus interior, swallowed piece by darkness. The fog around the bridge thickened further, closing distance, muffling the world beyond the railings. Even the cornfields vanished, replaced by blank white. The bridge no longer felt connected to land. It felt suspended over nothing. Tyler reached the top of the steps and paused. The aisle stretched ahead, dim and endless. At first he saw only seats and shadow. Then movement resolved within it. Shapes occupying spaces between the seatbacks, faint outlines where bodies should be. They were not solid. They were impressions in darkness, like figures formed from colder air. One shifted. Another tilted its head. The suggestion of small shoulders, small hands resting in laps, dozens of them, all facing forward, all still. He should have turned back then. Every instinct formed across 18 years urged retreat. But another sensation pressed deeper, overriding it. Recognition. These were not strangers. He did not know their names, yet something in their stillness felt known, inevitable. He took another step into the aisle. Behind him, Jess found her voice. "Tyler, come out, right now!" The words came thin and brittle. The beam of her flashlight slid across the doorway, illuminating the wet stairwell and the dark aisle beyond. For a fraction of a second, the light struck the face of one seated figure. It was unmistakably a child's face, pale, water-slick, eyes open and reflecting no light. The mouth hung slightly parted, as if mid-breath, though the body did not move. Then the beam jerked away. Jess gasped, choking on air. Inside the bus, the figures began to turn. Not together, not in rhythm. One after another, slowly, heads pivoted toward Tyler. Their movements were wrong, too smooth and too far, necks angling beyond natural limits. The sound that accompanied it was not bone or cloth, but a wet sliding, like something shifting underwater. When the last face turned toward him, the aisle seemed crowded with their attention. Their eyes, all of them, were fixed on him. Tyler's throat tightened. I didn't mean... The words felt absurd, yet he did not stop them. He did not know what apology he offered, or why it mattered. The figures remained silent. Then one in the nearest seat arose. It unfolded upward, joints extending with liquid slowness. Water streamed from its clothing, pattering onto the floor. The child's features were visible now, cheeks swollen pale, lips colorless, eyes too wide. Its head tilted at the same unnatural angle seen in the doorway moments before. It stepped into the aisle. The motion disturbed the pooled water, sending ripples outward that touched Tyler's shoes. Outside, Evan grabbed Jess's arm. "We have to pull him out!" But his feet did not move. The air around the bus felt charged, resistant, as if the space itself discouraged approach. Mariah forced herself away from the car and stumbled closer, shaking. "Tyler!" she shouted, voice breaking. The sound struck the bus exterior and died there, swallowed. Inside, more figures rose. One by one, from seat after seat, they stood. The aisle filled with them, a narrowing corridor of wet forms advancing by inches. Their feet did not splash, though the floor was flooded. Their eyes never blinked. Tyler tried to step back. His heel struck the stairwell edge. He glanced over his shoulder at the rectangle of fog-lit doorway. For an instant he saw his friends beyond it, pale shapes at the boundary of light. Relief surged. Then the bus moved. Not forward, not backward. It settled. The entire frame dipped slightly, as if sinking into soft ground. The river below responded with a slow, echoing lap against concrete. The sensation of height diminished. Tyler felt the impossible, the bridge lowering toward water, or water rising toward bridge. The figures in the aisle leaned with the shift, maintaining balance without effort. Their mouths opened together. The sound that emerged was not a scream. It was breath forced through water, a collective exhale that carried bubbles and depth. It filled the bus, pressed against Tyler's ears, vibrated in his chest. Images burst through his mind that were not his own. Headlights on ice, sudden sideways motion, children shouting, the black rush of river swallowing windows, hands clawing for air, the heavy press of coats and bodies, the last sight of ceiling turning dark. He staggered, overwhelmed by borrowed drowning. Outside, the bus's headlights flickered. Fog poured from the doorway in thicker waves, spilling down the steps onto the bridge. Jess saw water flowing with it, spreading across the pavement. "Evan," she whispered, "the river." The level below the railings had risen, lapping almost to the underside of the span. The bridge was descending into it, where the river was claiming it. She could not tell. Mariah lunged forward at last, terror breaking paralysis. She reached the stairwell and seized Tyler's jacket from behind. The fabric was soaked, cold as submerged cloth. She pulled with all her strength. His body jerked backward a few inches. Inside, the nearest figure extended an arm, its fingers lengthened, joints bending like liquid softness. They brushed Tyler's sleeve. The contact changed everything. Frost shot through the cloth into his skin. The drowning visions intensified. Pressure, dark, the frantic need to breathe. He cried out, sound breaking into bubbles. His knees buckled. The figures surged closer now, filling the aisle entirely, faces inches away. Their mouths opened wider, water streaming from them. The interior of the bus dimmed, as if submerged in silted depth. "Let him go!" Evan shouted, grabbing Mariah's shoulders and pulling. Together they dragged Tyler backward down the steps, the finger stretching naked from his sleeve, leaving streaks of water. As his foot crossed the threshold, the sound inside the bus cut off abruptly. Silence slammed back. They tumbled onto the bridge. Tyler collapsed, coughing river water onto dry concrete. Jess dropped beside him, hands shaking over his face. "Breathe," she said uselessly. He gasped air in ragged pulls, eyes unfocused, still seeing depths. Behind them, the bus remained, door open, figures crowding the stairwell shadow. For a moment they seemed unable to pass the threshold, halted at the boundary of their drowned space. Then the bus tilted further. The river reached the step. Water flowed up into the interior, meeting the pooled floor. The figures changed. Their forms loosened, edges dissolving into streams, faces blurred into pale shapes beneath the waterline. One by one, they sunk, not falling, but dispersing, drawn downward into the bus's flooded dark. The aisle emptied. Seats returned to stillness. Only water remained, filling to the windows. The headlights dimmed to embers. The engine, silent until now, gave a final hollow churn. The bus began to roll, not on tires, but as if buoyed. It slid sideways toward the rail. Metal touched concrete with a long scraping note. Then, with slow inevitability, the entire vehicle tipped beyond the edge. There was no splash. It passed into fog and river without sound, swallowed as if the water opened to receive it. The headlights vanished last, two pale coins descending into black. The river's surface settled. The bridge rose again beneath their feet, returning to ordinary height. Fog thinned. The far road reappeared. Only silence remained. They did not speak as they carried Tyler to the car. His clothes dripped steadily, though he had not entered the water. His skin was ice cold. They drove without headlights for the first 100 yards, fear of seeing anything ahead overpowering caution. When at last Jess turned them on, the road lay empty. Miller's Bridge receded behind them, a pale line over dark water, indistinguishable from any rural crossing. In the weeks that followed, none of them returned. Tyler recovered slowly. He remembered little beyond shapes and pressure and the certainty of many eyes. Sometimes he woke coughing, tasting river silt. He stopped streaming. The camera they had left on the bridge was never found. Evan avoided the river road entirely. Jess moved away the next year. Mariah refused to speak of that night. But others still drove Miller's Bridge after dark, and sometimes in fog they reported a bus stopped at its center, door opening to the cold. Some claimed to see children inside. Others said they heard water dripping where no rain had fallen. On certain nights, when the river runs high and the air smells faintly of mud, the bridge seems to sag again toward the water, and far below, something pale moves in the current, rectangular, silent, keeping its slow route through the dark, carrying those who never reach the shore.